Tom, I'm going to start by giving everyone a little behind the scenes on our podcasting methodology here. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So they all just heard the message from your dad talking about money and, what's it benefit a man to win the world and lose his soul? So if he had gone out there and been Zig Ziglar and done what he did and yet left you bereft as a kid of a dad who was devoted and doting and caring and whatnot, that would have been tragic. He would have been a broken hearted father. So everybody just heard the message. Now here's the behind the scenes. And I've mentioned it before. So I want to go get listener feedback on this thing. Now, if I go out and ask, all right, so who would accept more money or $1 million for just, a little trade-off of your health and relationships? Well, nobody's going to say yes. Not our crowd, at least. I hope many people wouldn't in general, but not our crowd. So if I put that out there, it's not going to get any responses. And I mean, I really don't think that we have listeners, and nor are you and I, Tom, the kind of people who feel like we are spending time working to make unnecessary revenue especially at the sake of our, family and relationships. I mean, I don't see you going, Kevin, just hold on there. I've got an opportunity to be able to afford that Ferrari I've wanted. So I don't have time to hang out with you right now. I don't see you doing that, or to your wife or whatnot. I mean, we think that we are primarily working to sustain what is needed for us and for our family. So I instead took the concept and framed it in a way, I think, to help us look at what are we working for? What would we hope for with abundance? So here Zig is bringing our attention to, obviously, we don't want to inadvertently sacrifice what is dear to us and most important for money. But we are working over here and we do want abundance. I mean, I do want abundance. I want more than just month to month and, the bare necessities. And I appreciate, your dad being pretty open with it. He did like nice things, right? I mean, you grew up with that. I mean, you guys had, especially during you were the youngest, you had fairly nice stuff. True.
We had good stuff. It wasn't crazy, I wouldn't say we were spoiled. I can also say that if there was anything I needed, it was there.
Yeah. Okay. So there we are. So cautioned, he gives us a caution, but now let's look at the awareness of what are we working for? So the question that I ask is, if your income tripled right now, what would change in your life and or work? Which is kind of interesting. Just think if my income tripled, I don't know why I picked tripled necessarily, but it just sounded right. I don't know. I'll have to look. In about 24 hours, we might have come close to 100 responses. So it's obviously one that hit a vein there. And I'll go down and read. Here's kind of the headlines, and we categorize them a little bit. Tom, a lot of people said they would hire help. So we obviously have a lot of business people here, men and women, and they would hire help. So the idea was produce more. I'll just give that one to you. How's that one set with you? If your income tripled, business, personal, whatever, would you put some towards hiring help, producing more?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that was the question, because Chachas and I, my wife Chachas, we've talked about, and I think when I look at some of these responses, people already have plans for the future. You have goals and dreams, right? Yeah. And so it's easy to say, well, one of the things that we said we would hire help on is we would probably get a chef, not to come in the house and cook, but maybe to prepackage 10 healthy meals a week that all we've got to do is reheat them. We would spend the extra money, sit down with a nutrition expert to make our our lifestyle better and our health improve at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of it's a luxury, and maybe it shouldn't be. Maybe that should be our first priority. But so when he said hire help, uh, the interesting thing is we work with a lot of small business owners who every job title in their business is them, right? they they do the marketing, they install the product, they place the order, they make the sale, they pay the payroll, they do everything. And so we asked them, well, if if you were going to replace yourself in what area, what would it be? And the answer that we help people discover is that you look at the lowest paying position that you're currently doing, that you have the least amount of innate talent and skill in, right?
Right.
You outsource that, and instead of you doing it yourself, which costs you X amount of dollars per hour, you're paying someone else. So I love that idea of productivity of, if we all of a sudden our income triples and we can take those things that are time consuming, but not in our strength zone and outsource that, that's a huge return.
Yeah.
In a business setting though, we should be doing that anyway.
Mhm.
And it's hard to make the jump when you're trying to figure out how to make the money work. Right. But I think most of us hang on to it too long.
Yeah. But and there again, we got so many people. Guy Williams, he says, I hire more people. Faye Bryant, I would likely hire an assistant and a CPA. Jennifer Harshman, more people would be working for me. Renee Vider, I'd be hiring more helpers. Carmen Shank, I'd hire some help. Kat Weldy, I'd hire a life coach and competent personal assistant. Barbara Rubio, I'd hire a nanny and get back to the gym for my mental and physical health. I know my wife would say more house cleaning work, though I always waffle on that because I also want my kids doing it. I don't want them to talk about being pampered and spoiled. I've always struggled with that because our kids have chores. Now, they don't do them as well as a professional cleaner would, or to that extent. I guess. And I think about that. I mean, how much time, and that, how many times like today do I come and go, okay, we got to do the show because I got to go pick up kids, got a new schedule. I feel I spend so much time. My wife does far more, but I do too, chauffeuring. We got 5 kids going different directions, 5 full-time kids at home. But man, that one's also kind of daunting because I feel I'm going to delegate my fatherhood and send somebody they don't know to chauffeur them around. I don't know. It's so we waffle with some of those personal questions, but yeah, business wise, absolutely. So it's not. I didn't really foresee. I don't know if I foresaw any of these. I just put the question out there. So that was a big one, hiring help. Next one was we actually compiled them, or my daughter Eliza did. Compiled them in 2 areas of saving, but one had a primary focal point of retirement funds. We know that's a big deal right now. We have more and more people who are not having the money to retire. Of course, then it just gets into the interesting issue, for us, Tom, on the topic of retirement in general. Now, obviously, we need to be putting money there to sustain us. And I tend to think, especially from a responsibility standpoint, if I were to become disabled to some degree or have some kind of minimizing of my capacity, otherwise, I sure don't care to retire. I know that was a primary soapbox, if that's fair to say, of your father in not retiring. Yeah.
I think there's a significant difference here. Dad never wanted to retire because his purpose was so clearly defined,
Yeah.
and his joy became in serving God's children. Right. So everything he did was to make a difference in the lives of other people. On the other hand, he had the financial capacity to where he didn't have to work.
Yeah.
And so that's where I see the balance. The balance is, gosh, we need to have enough savings or retirement or income producing assets that pay for our lifestyle at a reasonable rate, so that we can enjoy the world, and then we get to work for the joy of it. We get to focus our attention on the things that we were created to do and how we can solve problems for others. And what I learned from Rabbi Daniel Lapin was that retirement is not a word in the Hebrew language, and the reason for it is that it really connotates and means that we stop serving other people and other people now serve us.
Yeah.
That's what it means, is we are now a consumer and everybody's around us to serve us. And so that's the way the retirement definition kind of is. And so what I think it should be is we are just stepping into a new way of serving other people. So it could mean that the career, the vocation, the business that you have is something that you no longer have to do because you've got the money, but now there's a higher calling. There's another better way to go out and serve other people. And so when I think of let's say somebody who's 80, is there a greater? They're not retired. Now they have intentional time to spend with their grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a new position. It's not I'm done with life. It's I'm now in I'm in a position where I can have an impact that's going to ripple through eternity. So that's what kind of the way I look at retirement. I can't imagine not doing what I'm doing, but I can certainly imagine picking and choosing more carefully and having more balance and having more capacity for leverage for doing things that aren't of necessity but are of leverage and impact. That's what I get excited about. I can tell just looking at the comments that there's a lot of people who've thought about this. They probably, some of them even mentioned Dave Ramsey. And so, Dave teaches that every dollar should have a name. And so if you get a dollar windfall, if you're on the Ramsey plan, you know where that money's going, right? It's not a, what do I do with that money? It's already planned. It's going here, 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 and here. And then once you start filling out those baby steps, then you can start having a little bit of splurge every now and then, a little bit of fun along the way. So I like the answers that we're seeing in here because they're people have already thought it through. This is what I would do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, on the retirement thing, as you're talking, I'm thinking aside from money, what I think about somewhat, and granted, I've got a lot of kids, big family and whatnot. My youngest at home is 8. And I could say when she's 18, but really, man, when they get a car, it's a different world. So, 8 years from now, when my last one gets a car, that will be actually even be earlier than that because she's got siblings right above her that'll have cars and be doing some of the similar things. So that'll be a retirement of sorts of my, the chauffeuring and from a parenting standpoint. But yeah, financially, I don't see slowing down my work that much. But again, Jeff Walker, he says I would put more into my what is now a 50% contribution to retirement. Terry Johnson, I accelerate my retirement planning and investing. Wendy Bodie, I'd beef up my retirement. RB Williams, I would retire sooner and could take time to do some things, other things that I want to do, and on and on. So a lot of people did that, though. It's interesting. A lot of those people also, I'm reading partial segments of what they posted because a lot of them said I feed my retirement and give. So that's the next category. And we had, I did not have these added up. I'm tempting as I just browse through them there. It's almost near the top of responses on people who said I would give more. And that's one where, I know that we can say, oh, you should be giving a lot now, but that's legitimate. A lot of people aren't making huge abundance. And we do see that with abundance, people are more able to give. And, Tom, it's an interesting one that, there's things we can give aside from our money. Of course, we can give of our time, give of our spirit, give of our compassion. But with money, honestly, my dad sticks out, Dan Miller, because he spent a lot of time in his life without a whole lot of abundance. And now he has that. And he spent a lot of time in the faith-based arenas and lots of discussion and feelings around money and around having a lot of money and wealth and whatnot. And his simple statement is, regardless of where you stand or whatever, for his own personal experience, testimony, he sure is able to give a lot more now in his abundance than he was of money and of time and other resources. So that's not a commentary on you should make more money to be able to give more, but there's something to be said for that. So interesting to see that with a big increase, a lot of people, it's the first thing, the only thing that they said, more giving, more giving, more giving.
I love it. And, there's a reality. We can't give what we don't have. Right. That's the reality. And we had we should have Michael Mayer on. He has a book called 7L Leadership. And I remember we did a webinar with him. And on the webinar, he asked the audience, what's the most important number in the world? And so that's a big general question, right? And so some of them said, how much money you make. Some of them said how much money you have in savings. Some of them said their net worth. And he said, no, the most important money in the world, or a number in the world for money, is how much do you want to give away? And I really like that twist on it because, let's just say you just threw a number out and said, hey, I want to give away this much every year. Okay, that's awesome. So how are you going to be able to do that? And, the fastest way of doing it is to figure out how many problems you can solve. Because when you solve problems, like Rabbi Lappin says, we're rewarded with certificates of appreciation.
Yeah.
We call that money. So if I solve a lot of problems, I get a lot of money, and then I can give a lot of money. And so that's kind of a cool thing, is if your motivator is how much can I give away? And then you start putting names and faces on that. Do you like orphanages? Do you like helping foster families? Do you like cancer research? Do you like whatever it is? That's a pretty cool motivator. Yeah. And it's doing it for the right reason. So I'm going to go do what I do to the best of my ability so that I can give this number. If that number is a percentage of whatever you're bringing in, everything goes up along the way.
It's funny when you said the most important number and you left us hanging there for a second. I start thinking of like traveling, we get in the van going down the road. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is everybody there? That's the number we count a lot. All the heads in the family there. So you mentioned Ramsey. That was the next big category, is paying bills, and then debt. Tim Shanker, I'd pay off the house early. Savannah Clevenger, I'd get a new car and pay off student debt. Jamie McClellan, pay off debt. Joe Morris, pay my medical debt. Chelsea Connolly, pay off debts. Jessica Smith Moyer, I'd pay for all 3 kids' college tuition and build my little dream house in the South. Jana Hoffman, paying my house down. Katarzyna Jenna, my bills would be paid, yada, yada. So it just keeps on going. We know that we as a culture are debt laden. Matter of fact, I looked this up a couple of days ago in reference to another business I'm involved with, and we are just about to hit what they're saying is an all-time high in American consumer debt. However, it's just reaching back to where it was in 2008. Now we had, some financial issues in the culture back then, but it's interesting that we look at that, because if you take just the headline, we're about to reach an all-time high. It's not like chronic illness and disease, which has reached an all-time high, ever. I mean, it's just been a trajectory up, period. That's not been debt, consumer debt. So we were in 2008, we were at the all-time high. We dipped down. Now we're back about up to that. But I don't know how much has changed. Dave Ramsey's helped a lot of people, but as a culture, we still have so much debt, student debt. We have consumer debt. We have credit card debt. We have mortgage debt, which is, the least offensive of those. We have auto debt. That's pretty much a given these days. I wonder if that's going up right now because cars are more expensive. I don't know for sure, but possibly. But yeah, bills and debt and bills and debt. I mean, that right there is probably that's probably more of an imp. Of course it's not. That is more of an impetus for everybody who rolls out of bed and goes to work in the morning than the abundance aspect of that. Don't you think?
Yeah. When I used to drive, this is years ago, but I had a route into work and I'd be in this certain part of of the road about 7:30 every day. And so about twice a week, there would be a car I would see because they were on the same schedule. And they had the bumper sticker that said, I owe. So
So
off to
off to
work I
work I
go.
go. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well.
and that's, debt is such a huge, I mean, it's a huge thing. And I remember when we sold our house before we moved here, um, the buyer of the house came in, and it was a young family, and they were Asian, and there were three generations, and they paid cash. And I was so like in awe of this family that was putting the priorities of how do we create security for our family. And you could tell, I mean, they were living modestly, and they were all pitching in, and they were building a business, and they were buying this house, and they were paying cash. And the house was a house that they fit in snugly. I mean, it wasn't like this big house that they was, going to go. So I look at that, and I just think is kind of our marketing driven culture about how we got to replace this, and how that's not good enough, and how we need a new car, and how leases are so cool, and how, just put on a credit card. And then all of a sudden, your kids go to college and they graduate with $130,000 in college debt, and their starting job pays them $34,000. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a second, what's going on here? And gosh, somebody told me early on, this is before Dave Ramsey days, they gave me two bits of financial advice. The first one was only spend great grand dollars on luxury.
Okay.
And I said, what does that mean? And they said, well, you earn a paycheck. Don't spend any of that on luxury. You put some of that and earn some interest. That's a grand dollar. Don't spend any of that. The next year, the grand dollar earns some interest. Yeah, spend that on luxury. So, to make the math really simple, you put $1,000 in a 10% product. So the second year, you've got $100. That stays there. The third year, that $100 earns 10%. That's $10. That $10 is what you can spend on luxury. And that was a pretty cool idea. Just delayed gratification, pay cash, don't go into debt. And then the other one was, when you get your first two pay raises, whatever you're doing, don't change your lifestyle. And then, so you go to, this is for young people. This is great for young people. You go in and you get that first job, and boy, you're just squeaking by, right? I mean, I remember my first job and how much money we were making, and it was a big deal to figure out if we were going to eat out this week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get that first bump, that first raise, you still live on the old budget. And then you get the next raise, right? So now you've got two raises, but your new budget goes up to what the first raise was. And so you've got this cushion of two raises that's just going into savings and in the future. And those were two real simple concepts that keep people from this position. When you're in debt, there's probably no better daydream than imagining what would life be like if tomorrow everything was just paid off. That's an amazing thing. And the thing is we can create tomorrow today, right? We can do that. It takes good choices.
Well, and that's what I was going to speak to. I mean, we could just, I think you need to realize ourselves, and especially teaching our kids, that we have a marketplace out there, that there are no longer any barriers. zero barriers. We all sign up. Where there used to be billboards. I mean, who needs billboards anymore? Used to be newspaper advertising. Well, who needs that anymore? We all every day get up and flick on one of our devices, whether it's the smartphone or our computer screen, and we opt in to allow us to be pummeled with advertising, with promotions. Not only that, but promotions from companies that are mining our data and know what we like. So they're there ready to tempt us with exactly what they know we already like. And the temptation to get more, to get better, to get newer is so great. And I'm so aware of people that I consistently see who I know are quite a bit lower than my socioeconomic level, and how they generally have nicer things, later model things. They have later model cars than I do. They have the latest iPhone. They've got new clothes. Their kids got new clothes. And I'm grieved by that. And I don't fault them. It is just the culture we get to. You don't know anything else. And we all have the amenities, and no matter what level of income for the most part. And it's just, I just want people more and more to realize that we are being tempted at every corner. And I am too. I'm not immune to it. I think I'm aware of that, but man, it's a hard place to be in. Well, like Dave says, if you want to live like nobody else, you got to live like nobody else, and you have to be weird. And none of us want to be weird. We want to belong. Hey, the next one here, Tom, is investing. And it was maybe the least. Oh, no, it's not either. Not the least. Investing, though. Well, we could probably combine this. The next one was buying a home. And a lot of people said that. They said that along with investing in real estate, in their home. I mean, I love that right now. My gosh, one of my best investments right now is my home, because the value, well, it is if I were to sell the thing, which is so tempting. I'd make so much money. I just don't know where else I'd go. Have to come in and move with you, Tom. But investing. So that was a big one. So we know that that's one that people see the ability, the wealth and abundance that can come from investing. But there's the issue is you got to have money to make money. And that keeps a lot of people from it.
Yeah, I'm going to do a little political, I'm not going to call it a rant. I'm going to call it a perspective that's going on right now when it comes to money and income and wealth. So over the last 20 years, there has been a massive migration of money from the middle class to the rich. And it's been rapidly escalated during the pandemic. And we see it in the news and we see all these things. There's also been a rapid escalation from a lot of small businesses and medium-sized businesses to these almost monopolies, right? When we think of Amazon and Google and technology companies. And so what's going on? And then I just read this big article today in the New York Times, and it was talking about how there's been a big culture change, and people are realizing that all of life is not about work, that it's about these other things. And what the article was proposing is that, having a basic income or higher minimum wage or some sort of baseline to where we don't value our life on our job, right? It's not like our worth comes from the fact that we can produce some stuff. But here's the danger in it, okay? And this is what I believe is a challenge, is that as long as we are dependent on any type of outside help, whether it's a healthcare help or whether it's a child care support or a basic income or a tax credit, and then we start getting sold the idea that we should be really happy with just basic stuff, then what we're doing is instead of focusing our purpose in our life and serving other people, we're getting really focused on hey, you know what? I'm just going to be, it's okay to be average and to be okay with just this medium thing. Well, what you've really done is now we've got a culture that says, hey, the government's really better at stewarding our money than we are. Let's just give them all their money. And after all, they're going to give us back what we need to survive. And so I see this kind of insidious thing going rather than how I think it should be. And what I'm really excited about is, oh my goodness, people have finally figured out that their life doesn't revolve around work. Their work revolves around their life. Okay. And so when we figure that out and we get our balanced life in gear, our priorities are what's going to happen is our performance and our work is going to go up. We're going to be more effective at whatever we do if we're effective in every part of our life. I mean, that's just the way God created us. And so if that's the truth, then shouldn't our compensation for what we provide be reflective and congruent of the contribution we make? And I don't want people to sell their freedom of no ceiling for the security of, well, we'll take care of this basic stuff and don't worry that we're taxing you 80%.
Right.
Right. Well, because what'll happen is that's just a bigger migration. And let's just look at the way the world's systems work. The people in power want to stay in power. I mean, that's just the way all systems are. And so if the and so it's really easy to settle and to say my goal in life is to have all my needs covered, when I really think that when our purpose in life becomes to serve other people and to solve problems in our gifts and talents, however God created us. And sometimes we do what we have to do in order to do that. But when our goal is ultimately to serve others and provide for our family, when that why, that bigger cause, that changes how we do what we do. And then when we put our focus around the core, which is our faith and our family and our health, when we put our focus around the core, not only does our why power what we do, but we get better at what we do in the process.
Yeah.
And then that's when the fruit comes. And so I would much rather people say, you know what? I'm going to get my priorities in line. I'm going to take care of the home court, and I'm going to serve others through my work. And that the fruit, the blessing that comes, I'm going to be a great steward of it. There's not going to be a ceiling. And there are some in our society who, for a lot of different reasons, disability, whatever, it's our collective response. We got to take care of them. We got to provide for their needs. That's not at all what I'm suggesting, that we don't provide for the needs who can't serve and support themselves. But there is this trend of, let us take care of you. We know better to do with your money than you know what to do with your money. Just pay it all into the pot. We'll give you back what you need, and lower your goals, your objectives, lower what you want to accomplish. That's not a big deal anyway. You should really just be happy hanging out and hanging out with your friends. Well, I'm here to tell you that our purpose in life is not to be happy. That's not our purpose. Our purpose in life is to fulfill our purpose. And as we move towards our purpose, happiness is the byproduct. And so you're getting this big cultural message that your purpose in life is to be happy. And let us give you the basics that'll make you happy. And then you can go do what you want, and don't create a ruckus. I'm telling you, you were created to create a ruckus in the way you serve people. And don't buy into that. I trust you. I mean, I look at all of our listeners, and I trust what you're going to do with the gifts God's given you more than I trust somebody who would want to take that gift from you and disperse it how they think.
All right, I'm going to title it Tom Talks Politics. We'll get the most downloads we've ever gotten. All right, I can see the meme now. Man, a couple quick points there. I mean, you talk about in a sense, lowering our expectations. I mean, that was a real psychological research study done eons ago, that there is some, you can almost make a case for, hey, the way to get happier, just lower your expectations, quit expecting so much. And that may be happiness in the moment. It's not where we find true joy, fulfillment, and back to the abundance that we can serve others with, which is where we find purpose. So, man, Tom, how many times I speak about your quote of having the highest standards, which to me is expectations. I just, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. I love it. I don't feel pressure about it. I want the highest expectations and the deepest grace as well, which is the key there. But to what you said, and there's lots of people who have commented on this. I'm sure not the first, but it is discouraging, the focus even on minimum wage. Who wants their goal to be the minimum wage that has to be given to you? Wouldn't we all like to earn our abundance, to earn our 3 times our income by our own ingenuity, by our perseverance, by our intellect, by our willfulness? We want to earn that. And I want so much more of the call to be, can we help educate people, find ways to bring apprenticeships back, internships? Can we, matter of fact, Rob, just prior to this show, this is episode 928, is episode 927. We had Jeff Brown on, and he has a new book called Read to Lead, which is the name of his podcast as well. And our focal point of his book is not just reading, but how can we read and actually learn? And it comes back to that aspect of, we have never had more available information ready at hand, that we can learn the secrets of the world. And well, here, Tom, I don't know if you've read this, but I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's tragic, literally tragic. It was something done on Reddit. Somebody asked the question: if someone from the 1950s suddenly appeared today, what would be the most difficult thing to explain to them about today? And a anonymous person on Reddit said, this is their quote to explain: I possess a device in my pocket that's capable of accessing the entirety of information known to man. I use it to look at pictures of cats and get in arguments with strangers. I mean, it is funny, but it's funny because it's so stinking true. Every day I flip on, or it's already on this computer, and I have access to this, the entirety of information known to man. I can learn how to build a rocket online for free. I can read everything Einstein ever did. And I use it to get on social media and argue with people about politics and whatnot. And if we can come back and get out of this minimum wage mindset. I know that's unfair, feels unfair to some people, the people listening to this show, the people who are that we have influence over as a group listening to the show. We have the ability to expect more than the minimums, and to help inspire and equip those around us, those we love, to have higher expectations as well.
Yep. In the book Lynchpin, Seth Godin, I think the first 40 pages of it covers how the educational system in the United States was created. And it was created for the sole purpose of producing widgets. What they wanted was to produce citizens who could read and write and do a certain amount of arithmetic, so they would be a good employee in a manufacturing plant, doing a repetitive motion over and over again. It wasn't to produce somebody who could think and make good judgment decisions on what was best in life around principles and values. That's just reality. And so now, I remember early in my sales career, we were working with a company, and we were putting some sales training in, and one of the sales managers said, we were talking about, how do you drive sales? And he said, well, what I like to do is, when a new salesman comes on and they start having a little success, I encourage them to go buy a new car, because if they buy a new car, they've got a big car payment, and that car payment's going to
Wow.
motivate them to sell more. And I
Wow.
thought, wait a second. Uh, why? I mean, that's a little microcosm, but we take it to the macro level. Uh, how much control do big companies and corporations have over people because of debt? Because, you know, hey, this is what it costs, and this is what it is. And if you're going to play, you got to pay. And now
Right.
somebody gets trapped into a path or a career that's not inspiring. It's not what they wanted for themselves, but they don't have any choices. So you get out of debt, you suddenly got choices. You can
Yeah.
do what you want. And now that quote again, the reality of uncertainty and the certainty of mortality, because people's timelines have all been suddenly shrunk. I could get sick and die at any minute. Life is important. I'm going to spend time with those I love. When that suddenly came into focus as, hey, this is the priority, career is second, it's allowing us to make some pretty good decisions on what we want to do.
Yeah.
And if you have debt, it limits your options. If you don't have debt, oh, you can go any direction you want.
Well, you're talking about, to some degree, the golden handcuffs. And that was one of our categories here is I would quit my job. And that one is, man, I understand that. We've probably all been there at some point. Even people who say, gosh, I'd quit my business, or, get rid of that. We get ourselves into a place that is not a place we want to be. For anybody who answered with that, man, I feel for you. And that's your primary job, is to figure out how to get into something that you would do, kind of like what you talked about, Tom, that you're grateful that the work that you do is what you would do, whether you needed the money or not. What a place to be in. After that, Tom, really, we could culminate the last couple categories into, well, people put travel, move, and free time, but I'm going to say just self-care to some degree. And so we had a lot of people speak to that they would do some things for themselves. So travel was a big one, and just personal time in general, things that they would invest in for themselves, for their own joys. That is one that has probably grown in my own personal value in recent years, Tom. I just got back from another 4-day getaway. And at this point, I'm doing that. Gosh, I'm probably averaging every 2 months. So every 2 months. So I've got businesses like, everybody else. I've got my daily job and my grind. I've got a big family. I've got 5 kids full time at home right now, going different directions. My wife has work that she does as well in that. So it's a big deal to take personal time, but it is such a gift for me that my kids actually and my wife advocate it for me, even though it's hard. They don't like me being gone, but advocate it because I come back inspired. And it is such a gift for me that I no longer feel, for the most part, guilt about in that, and feel like it's a necessity. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And man, I want to inspire people to that. So a lot of people here said with more money, they would take more, literally just free time. It was a big response. Free time. They would travel and just do those things that inspire them, which is one of the spokes on the Ziglar wheel of life, that personal spoke.
Yep. And, Kevin, I'm just going to comment on the lesson you're teaching. You're teaching your kids the lesson that their happiness depends on their choices, not on anyone else.
Hmm.
And that no one can make them responsible for that person's happiness.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's a lot of relationships that are messed up because one person in the relationship tells the other one, you're responsible for my happiness, how you behave, how you treat me, what you do with your life, the decisions you make. If I don't like it and I'm unhappy, you need to change. You need to fix that because you're responsible for my happiness. This is the exact same thought process of the political rant that I went on. We need to take ownership and responsibility of our money and our happiness. What the powers that be are trying to do is they're trying to talk you into letting them be responsible for your happiness and then telling you what makes you happy.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. And nobody can make you happy. There's no other person out there in the world who is responsible for your happiness. You are responsible for your own happiness. Now, when you love someone and you have a commitment and a relationship and a responsibility to your kids, of course, you're going to do things that allow, this is where my mission statement comes from, to create the atmosphere that allows you to become the person God created you to become.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I take responsibility for your happiness, then I'm not teaching you how to create the atmosphere that allows someone to become the person that God created them to become, because God didn't make you to be dependent on somebody else's love or dislove of you for you to be happy. There's only one relationship in the universe where that's embedded in, and that's the person who cannot ever disappoint. And that's God. That's God's job, right? I mean, he can't disappoint us. Everybody else can. And so we need to put our trust in the one who can't disappoint, who, because they know what's best. So I love that example. Far too many role models are, hey, you know what? They're enablers, and that person that's what they need. And so I'm just going to give them what they need at my own expense. And that's not a path to creating the atmosphere that allows them to become the person God created them to become.
I've learned that somewhat the hard way, Tom. So thank you for reiterating that, folks. It's such a gift. All the responses, there were so many. And it really helped me see some of the breadth of what we consider as we spend our days working away, what we're working for, and what the payoff is, and what's most important to us. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.